Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. Happy Halloween. As part of our 13 days of Halloween content coverage, we thought we'd throw a video out there where we talk about our favorite horror movie endings. This is not necessarily the best horror movie endings, the ones that are considered, you know, iconic or memorable or all of that. It is simply personal choice. 5 each. I've got 5, you've got 5, so 10 in total. And I racked my brains and thought long and hard about this to try and come up with stuff that was a bit outside the norm, because there are popular movies with endings that I really do enjoy. Things like The Thing, for example, is an ending I do quite like a lot, and stuff like that. So I had a little think and came up with 5 that I don't think, well, I know for sure. I'd be very surprised if you had any of my 5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing some of your more obscure ones because I rack my brains on this one. And I think it is quite tough to come up when someone asks you what's your favorite horror movie endings. That's like actually quite a tough question and something I think a lot of people would struggle with because
Yeah,
you do kind of automatically go to the more iconic ones and the more obvious ones, which I have touched on quite a few of the more famously known ones because that's just what your mind kind of goes to. And like I said, it's a good, you have to kind of get into the mindset of what is you're talking about the best or your personal favorite ones, the ones that impact you the most. So I think I've just gone with the ones that when I think of the best or my favorite horror movie endings, the one that I think are the most memorable.
yeah.
These are the ones that just jumped at the front of my mind. Whether or not, like, if I really looked back on the more obscure ones that I maybe don't remember as well, but these are the ones I guess because as I famously known, here they're always mentioned, always talked about by everybody, so you can't help but think of them kind of thing.
Of course.
So we'll get into it and yeah. I'm
Of
looking forward to hearing
course.
your ones anyway.
Yeah, as well. Like, I mean, an ending as well. What you define as an ending is subjective. Are we talking about the final scene of a movie? Or are we talking about the last 15 minutes, an entire sequence? It's subjective. I consider it to be anything up to the last 20 minutes towards credit, if it's part of effectively a final sequence of events that leads you towards it, or the final scene. Some of mine, at least 2 of mine, are literally the final scenes in the movie, the final shots. So that kind of how it sticks. But we'll start with you then. You get us going with your first one.
Okay, well, I haven't actually put them in any particular order. I'm just going to put them in the way I've written them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to do it in like a tier type way, what's the number one or whatever.
No, absolutely not. No, no. I
Okay.
couldn't do that. I couldn't. There's no sense to that.
Okay, I mean, when you talk about horror movie endings, I think this one, I'm not sure if it'll be on your list or not, but it's the ending of the original Saw movie. I think it's one that a lot of people would go to as just a massive, shocking twist of an ending, and it's just the sort of thing where you can't like explain it to somebody. You kind of had to be there for when Saw first came out. I think it was 2004 maybe when it came out,
Mhm.
and you just had to be there at that time, to see the impact of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time that famous Saw movie kicks in and everything was explained, with the culmination being the seemingly deceased man in the middle of the room rising up, revealing that that was Jigsaw in the room the whole time. Masterminding the whole thing. I think it's just like such a great twist and one that like when on rewatching the movie, it doesn't necessarily like lessen the impact of it. It makes it almost more interesting that you know he is there. But it's one of those ones where it's like I wish I could experience it again for the first time because the impact of it first time, not knowing it's going to happen. Yeah, it's a great one.
It really is. That was on my list. When I initially made a list, I also chose some ones that were more famous. And the idea was if I couldn't come up with anything to replace it, it would stick. And so I sat there for ages with Saw thinking about all the movies, all of them, because a lot of them have good, strong twist endings as well. Admittedly, one almost ended up on my least favorite endings. That was the second Saw movie, but didn't get there in the end either. But yeah, this was definitely up there. You describe it absolutely brilliant, and I think the best way you can sum it up is that if you watch it now, knowing that movie, knowing the series overall, like if you watched all the movies up to date, it's still fucking hit. I would also throw in alongside that I think as strong as that
Mm.
is Saw 3.
Yeah, Saw 3 is a really good one as well. But I feel that like it was so strong that they were always trying to recapture that magic, that lightning in a bottle in every sequel it saw. And that's kind of like it became a sort of like M. Night Shyamalan type thing where they were always trying to seek out
Staple.
that next twist, that next big reveal when the Saw music plays at the very end. You expected it every single time. And admittedly, I think they always did a pretty decent job of really doing some nice reveals and stuff that were quite cool
Yep.
during those moments, but it never quite hit the heights of the first, which most movies hitting the heights of the sequels, the original, getting the original feeling and stuff. Like it's hard to recapture that, and I don't think it ever really did.
No, I 100% agree with you. Perhaps you can tell me this. I can't remember which one this is, but the one that always comes to mind is one of the later Saw sequels, and it's the one where the character of Hoffman, Costas Mandalorian, who doesn't get enough love for his role in Saw, he really doesn't.
Completely agree.
Yeah, the box, the way he ends up in the box, that ends up being
Yeah.
part of, yeah, that was another really good one.
I think that might be 5. One where it ends with him laying down in the coffin, the glass
Yeah.
coffin type thing, and the blood. Yeah, the guy gets crushed above him. Yeah, I think that
Yep.
might be 5, maybe. Yeah, like it has had quite a few good things at the end of these movies, but and a lot of other horror movies. I think that after Saw came out, they all kind of tried to almost be a little bit inspired by the idea of having these big like twists at the end of movies, where they reveal the killers and these big mysteries unraveling and things like that. It kind of inspired a big movement at that time for the next couple of years after as well. That's like the impact of it.
Man, talking about it, it's like, oh yeah, the Saw movies were good. Most of them were pretty fucking good. Weirdly enough,
Yeah, I mean,
the original run is 10 times better than what we've got in the last few years with Jigsaw and Spiral.
Spiral, yeah. Better not speak about Spiral, but yeah, I mean, I've always been like a big like defender of the Saw movies. I don't know, I know they get a lot of hate. They are obviously essentially, when you break it down, torture porn and that kind of stuff. But I think the baseline story of it, of Jigsaw, John Kramer, his whole story and stuff, it kind of got lost and blurred along the way. Like he's trying to get these people to like appreciate life, but then you're like tearing off their limbs and basically killing them and stuff like that, so they can't really survive the traps.
Yeah.
Kind of, and then that kind of got tied into the story a little bit. I don't know. I'm like always been a bit of a defender of the franchise because I've always enjoyed it. Yeah.
As we get shitty sequel after shitty sequel, you're always going to end up appreciating the original run more and more, I think.
Definitely.
Okay, I'm going to throw up my maybe most obvious one, purely because of my fandom of this specific movie. But it's not just the experience of all it is an ending. I'm going to throw out the end of The Return of the Living Dead, a movie that I adore, obviously. It's my #1 horror movie still today. I think it's the best zombie movie / horror movie I've ever seen because of the complete package. But it's also a very downbeat movie to the point, because you watch these movies and you're like, well, how are you going to get out of this? How are you going to get out of this? How are you going to get this? And then this ending sequence, of course, just really revolves almost in shock moment of just calling a number, the launch of the missile, the slow sound of it whistling through the air, and then the freeze frame as it hits, and you see all these different things where no one was going to get out of this situation. They were dead no matter what. But that then leads into the sort of imagery of burning buildings, destruction, as the army talks over it, and you get that iconic theme playing, suggesting that the exact same sequence of events, because the bodies are being burnt by the explosion, that it's creating the same acid rain issue. And we kind of end with a replay of the dead coming like out of the graves, suggesting that there's no way around this, because if you watch Return of the Living Dead, you know it. This is a different kind of zombie. It's an almost indestructible type of zombie. And that ending where no one survives, yet it doesn't work out how the army wanted to anyway, is so fucking good. That when people talk about the most depressing endings, they always reference things like The Mist. Always reference. And I'm like, no, bitch, go back to 1985 and The Return of the Living Dead. That was the most downbeat ending ever.
Yeah, I mean, of course, your first one would be your all-time favorite horror movie. So
Yeah.
quite, if you know anything about you, that would always be one you pick. But no, I completely agree. It's such a great movie, and that's an amazingly bleak conclusion to the entire story. So yeah, I think you described it perfectly. That it is a really, really good ending. And yeah, I love the twist as well, the explosion, how that doesn't like solve the problem. Like it's going to continue going on and spiraling and spiraling. Like it can't be stopped.
Yep.
That's like a cool thing. And awesome. That's a good one. Okay, well, might as well get out of the way, considering you literally just mentioned the name. I'm going to put out The Mist, the ending of The Mist right there. I'm a massive sucker in horror. We just mentioned a particular bleak ending, but The Mist, it's up there, I think, as arguably maybe one of the bleakest that has been put to film, really, that I have seen anyway. Because the only thing that lets The Mist down, I think, on the whole, is that the movie before the ending is like pretty average on the whole. It's not like a great movie up to that point. It has good moments in it, but I think like the thing everyone remembers about the Mist, if you talk about, to say the name, thinking that ending, aren't they?
Always.
Yeah, I guess I'm just sick like that. But the bleakness of the ending, I don't really enjoy happy conclusions in horror movies, and the idea that he thinks that there's like no other option but suicide at that point with
Mm.
his son in the car and the other people there, and then to have literally executed them and then to step out of the car and then salvation comes along at that moment. Like that's just a completely cruel joke and ending, and yeah, you can't help but love it, but it's obviously like really sad at the same time.
Is it the most famous, probably the most famous bleak ending nowadays? Like, if you look at lists online and what other people say, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that's considered as bleak.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can get more bleak than that,
At
to be
least
honest.
in a mainstream kind of way, at least in a way
Mm.
that a lot of people have seen, like not just the niche horror movie fans.
Yeah, I think like more on like a ground, like it feels like so much more personal because of like if you like have kids and stuff like that, you can imagine what would drive you to make that decision to be like
Mm.
there's literally no hope, it's like a hopeless ending, and then to give that semblance of hope after the fact is just like man, it's quite a gut punch, and yeah, I think it's just one that once you've seen it, you don't really like forget. It has been like I think parodied a little bit and stuff like that because it's so famous, so it's been mocked a little bit here and there, kind of lessens the impact a little bit. But Thomas Jane is like really, really good in the role, and his like reaction when he realizes it feels like really like a real like it's obviously like a little bit. It's just like an amusing like aspect to it because it's just like it's almost so cruel that you almost can't help but laugh at the like hilarity of it. Like the woman that he saw earlier like rides past on the truck and stuff like that, and it's just what would you do in that situation? What he's just gonna presumably he's gonna just now obviously kill himself as well because like how would you live with that decision?
I guess so, yeah. I guess that's kind of what you think would happen. It's really interesting that you bring that up as well, because the very first episode a couple of months ago of Sometimes Dead is Better, the series that
Mm,
myself and Brendan do in regards to Stephen King adaptations, covers
yeah.
The Mist. And I worried when we got to the ending that we were going to have very opposite views at the ending, because, no spoilers, I am no fan of this ending at all.
Mm,
I think it's got a lot of issues wrong with it, even though I can recognize the whole bleakness of it. But what surprised me in that video was Brendan agreed with me. He was a
mm,
fan. So, it's go watch that video if you want to kind of get a deep dive into why we have problems with this ending.
sure.
Okay, now we head into lesser known territories. So I am going to throw out probably the one that when I told my wife it, she went, "Really? That film?" And then I told her and reminded her what the ending was. And she was like, "Oh shit, that is such a good ending." Final Destination 5.
Oh yes, I was potentially going to have this one on my one,
Oh,
but
you remember
you
it
go
then,
for
yeah?
it. Yeah.
Well, it's simple. Final Destination 5 is an average Final Destination movie all the way through up until its ending, where it reveals that it is a prequel. And that stunned
Yeah.
me, stopped me in my tracks. And we even went back and watched it a second time and realized in a second watch that they had been so carefully clever to never show us technology, so that it
Mm,
wouldn't date because if they were using iPhones and stuff like that, you'd have an instant problem. But that
yeah.
it's all hidden brilliantly. And of course, it's a prequel. This film takes place before the events of the first one and ends on the plane. And it
Mm,
is such a brilliant moment of writing and a full circle for Final Destination. Because
yeah.
bear in mind, as of right now, we've never had another film. So it
No.
actually did end the franchise. As of now, everything else is coming back. So it wouldn't surprise me if that eventually comes back. But yeah, I loved it. Like for such an up and down series, for it to end on such a high was like brilliant.
Yeah, I remember all the trailers for this movie made it seem like just be another generic Final Destination movie, and in a lot of ways it was. I just saw it in the cinema, and I just went in because I hadn't seen a Final Destination movie in the cinema. I thought it'd be fun to go and see one. I think there was maybe 3D aspects to it. I can't remember 100%. There might have been like another law uh, at the time, and yeah, obviously though it just come out, so I'd not seen spoilers or anything, and no one had spoken about it.
Yep.
So that moment at the end when the characters get on the plane, and then you see the characters from the original and stuff like that, and it's like all ties in. Like it's just yeah, it's a mind blowing moment,
Yeah.
definitely, like very memorable. I loved it.
Yeah. That's
It's a
that.
great one. Okay, this is a favorite of mine. It's from the movie Insidious, the ending
Okay.
of Insidious. I don't know if you remember it at all, but it's after Josh and Elise and everyone gets back on the further Ghostland place from saving the son. I think I can't remember his name. Dalton, his name is. Yeah, they get back from saving him. They think they've escaped the Bride in Black, think everything's all okay, and then Elise, she picks up like a camera and points it at Josh, and she takes his picture, and then he gets like really furious at the fact that she's taking this photograph of him, and his demeanor changes. Patrick Wilson does a really great performance of like just completely changing from his like soft exterior to suddenly this really sinister figure,
Mm.
and then he let like this is almost like this is like a prequel to everything in this movie because he kills Elise in this moment. He chokes her to death, and every movie after that shows her backstory. But this is actually her death, and then it shows on the photograph that she took of him was that actually he's been possessed by the Bride in Black, and that leads into the next movie where he is still possessed by the Bride in Black, and they have to try and like save him from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's a really great moment because just the way it like pans around at the camera and his whole performance and like her face, it's just like really great acting. You know, the music turns up to 11. The Insidious soundtrack is great, and it's just a really great moment. I really remember it a lot.
Yeah, I didn't see Insidious until a few years ago. Then we kind of watched all of them in a row because they were quite good movies overall. Ups and downs, but overall good movies. A lot of it, as you said, hinges on performances. In the early movies, Patrick Wilson, but across all the movies, Lin Shaye is one of my favorite actors as well. But I do remember this ending. I do remember it, and even like me, who I consider myself unscarable, it gave me a jolt.
Yeah, it's like I just remember like the Patrick Wilson's performance so much, like the way he changes his exterior and gets really furious at her and stuff like that. And yeah, just I think when Insidious movie came out, I wasn't even that old, so it like really had quite an impact on me in terms of being quite scary. So the Bride in Black character like always kind of freaked me out and stuff like that. And yeah, I thought it was a really great way to end the first movie.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It is a good one. It is at least in the paranormal horror aspect as well, because I had a long think about that too, about paranormal horror ones. I didn't really come up with any that I was really satisfied with, So yeah.
So I like in a horror movie when they give you that moment where you think that they've done it, they've saved the day, it's a happy ending, and then suddenly like it switches gears and it actually is like, no, actually we're gonna have this really like dark like sinister ending. Yeah, it's a cool moment.
See, there's a common thread here at the moment. We haven't really come up with anything that's actually nice, like a happy ending or a pleasing ending or whatever. It's always surrounding either the death, destruction, or finality of the characters involved.
Like I said, that's just what I look for in horror. I love like a dark, bleak ending that just leaves you like feeling like devoid of like happiness. I think
Agreed.
that's what horror's all about, man.
It is, but I also love an ending that gives you a little something after a relentless experience. So my next three, the last three, in fact, all have that. So I'm going to go with the first one, and it is
should be interesting. I mean, a happy or more like uplifting horror ending after what you've spoken about.
Yeah, I don't want to use that word happy because I'm not so happy, particularly with this one, but I'm going to jump in with this one. So it's my favorite modern horror zombie movie. It is The Night Eats the World, a movie I've banged on about to just about everybody to watch. I love this movie because it is relentlessly harsh mentally to watch. But its ending is one that I just absolutely adore because after such a relentless experience of this one character, not so much surviving zombies, surviving the loneliness of his own things. And if you've seen the movie, I don't want to go into the twist, but that leads into the ending and him deciding to flee the apartment, forcing himself to flee the apartment by basically setting on fire. And he swings across to the other side of the building and slams his head on the wall and then crawls, when he wakes up, crawls up the side of the building. Interestingly, they always do a shot there as well of like a zombie at the window, sort of showing that it still isn't safe. But the end of the movie is him sitting bloodied on top of that other rooftop. And he's breathing heavy and he looks around and you get this panning shot of Paris and you see basically just miles of rooftops. Because basically why this is important is the building he was on was very isolated. It had no connecting rooftops. It was in the middle of the road in itself. And what this does, and the movie ends there, and I realize it doesn't sound that good, but what it does with the music playing and all that is it gives hope. Momentarily, he has hope. He now has roofs to cross over. Who knows who he might find alive in other buildings? Who knows what opportunities await? It's hope when he had none. That's why I love it.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of like good symbolism in that whole imagery. You know, he's been living such a hopeless existence. Even like that possibility, like you said, that there could be other survivors,
Mm.
or even a possibility to even escape or find more civilization or just get away from the hell he's been living in.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's definitely some hope in that for sure. Yeah, definitely. It's a good one. All right. This is from a movie I don't know if you've seen, but it's called An Incident in Ghostland.
Oh,
It's
I've not seen
a movie that has been reviewed on the site. It's a home invasion movie. I actually would rank it up as my favorite home invasion movie horror that I have actually ever seen. Highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I'm not going to go into the depths of what the movie is actually about. Basically, it's a home invasion movie
Yep.
about a mother and two daughters that is living their normal life until one day some evil motherfuckers break into their house and start making their lives living hell in like all sorts of ways. And there's like an amazing twist in it that makes everything that's happening in the movie far, far more depressing than they already were. And the ending to it is technically a happy one, but it has like a really emotional gut punch in it. Basically, I don't want to spoil the twist for it, but one of the girls in there's two sisters that are remaining survivors, and they're getting abused in all sorts of ways. Basically, in the movie, it's really like messed up.
Mm.
And one of the girls, she escapes from the reality that she's living in through a sort of like daydream she has, and there's a whole twist involving that. I don't want to spoil, but it's an amazing twist, and it makes it like even more depressing and sad what's happening. But yeah, I'd highly recommend it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I've not seen it. I kind of get an imagery.
I can spoil it for you if you like. I mean, it's up to you.
You might as well, because ultimately, this is a spoiler heavy video.
Well, spoiler warning right here. Basically, yeah, because the two girls are getting abused in the reality they're in, she creates this future reality for herself. Basically, in the movie, it pans forward what you think is just showing like in the future of her life. So you presume that she somehow escaped from this home invasion situation. The police came because she imagines the police came and saved her basically. And you see her as an adult, new actress and everything, living her life as a writer and stuff like that. So she's living like this, but she still like can't move past like what she went through and stuff like that. And basically, long story short, eventually it turns out you find out through the movie that this whole future that you thought was her after she'd escaped from the incident was actually just this alternate reality she'd created for herself to escape from the hell she was living in as a child, basically. Yeah,
But
and yeah, it's really like sad when we find out that's revealed, but it's like a really cool moment. And then they do actually eventually get saved, but it's still like they're still children that have to live with the trauma that they've gone through and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a really good ending.
woo, harsh
Yeah,
stuff. Man.
I'd recommend it though. It's a really genuinely best home invasion movie I've ever seen, man.
I can picture the cover on the site and the review. So yeah,
Yeah,
but it was there.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
cool.
I don't. I wonder if you've seen this movie, Raccoon Valley.
I have not, I'm afraid.
Okay, it's also reviewed on the site. I'm a big fan of this one. It's a bit of a hidden gem, about 70 odd minutes long as well. So you kind of initially look at it and think, well, okay, there's not much to this movie. Particularly if you read the synopsis on IMDb, which kind of just sounds like your run-of-the-mill infection movie, except it's so fucking not. Its big thing is it surrounds a woman who's deaf. She's deaf. So when our town gets evacuated, she doesn't know it gets evacuated because of an infection. And she
Alright,
goes about a normal life without really noticing anything wrong because she's used to being isolated. She lives alone. She doesn't speak to her neighbors, that kind of thing. Anyway, then she starts to see odd figures around the place. Now, this is an infection movie, but it's not zombies or anything like that. And most of the baddies in this actually just stand off in the distance watching her with like messed up faces until like the end of the movie and that thing. Eventually, she realizes something wrong, but the town's been quarantined now, so she can't leave. So the film's strength comes from this: is that she's deaf. So are we. So basically, there's almost no dialogue in the movie. It relies on two things, which is the sounds of echoes and things like that she would hear in her back of her throat sort of thing, and music. The music that we get to kind of enhance the scene and stuff like that. That blew my mind. But the ending is just pure lovable. It is lovable as fuck. As after a particularly bad situation and scenario and trying to get in contact with her brother outside the town and so on, she wakes one morning, he comes downstairs to find a person standing dead still in her living room, dressed in like army fatigues and with a gas mask on. But the problem is they're standing stock still, which is exactly what the monsters, the infected, have been doing as well. And there's that moment, and then he holds up a bit of paper with the word hello written on it. And that's how it ends. And it's just like, that's such a lovely ending, meaning that they've come to save her. Her brother had managed to get in contact with him saying she wasn't infected, get in there, help her, and so on. And they've obviously told them she's deaf. So don't startle her, don't do this, whatever. And they like, I thought it was a really good ending. That movie's about 72 minutes long. So it's a very short investment for people, but I do urge people to check it out. It's called Raccoon Valley. It's a bit of a hidden gem, I think.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a really, really good, cool concept for a horror movie. And yeah, the ending sounds really like that sort of uplifting type moment in some horrible scenario that is nice sometimes in horror. Sometimes it's nice. Not my preference, but sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. I've saved a very, very obvious one. Not that I haven't had really obvious ones up to this point, but it's the Blair Witch Project, the original Blair Witch Project, the final sequence of that movie. When they find the house in the woods that randomly appears, and you see one of the guys standing in the corner. I saw the movie at quite a young age, so I think that's why it stuck with me and had quite an impact. I used to like swear I could see things in the movie that maybe like you don't actually see, like you could maybe get a glimpse of like the witch in the corner or something like that.
You start to freeze it almost.
Yeah, it's say what you will about the movie, but at the time when it came out, had massive impact. It invented pretty much the found footage horror film.
Popularized it. Didn't invent
it. I said pretty much. Yeah, and just had a massive impact on me. When I think of conclusive chapters of horror films, it's one that always comes back to me. That after the bit where they're in the tent and they get attacked in the tent and then they come bursting out of there, and at least that whole final section. Yeah, it's still think it's like a good, if you were going to show anyone like a scene from the movie, that'd be the one you maybe would show it. Yeah.
It's one of those movies that you can look back now on and criticize easily could, but its impact on movies and cinema, on how a great or a very successful movie can be made for so cheap, cannot be overlooked. Forget what the fuck they did with found footage by today's standards. But 1999, it was fresh, it was interesting. I didn't mean to jump on you with that, but it always bugs me because although even Cannibal Holocaust is not the first found footage movie, there's one, I can't remember what it is, that's considered to be the earliest example. Everybody overlooks Cannibal Holocaust as being a found footage movie. But I always say Blair Witch popularized it. Look at the money made from Blair Witch Project. Do you know what I mean? Like, good God. And of course, from that, we get Paranormal Activity. I actually wanted originally, when we did this list, to think of a found footage one with an ending that I admired enough. Like I went for the Paranormal Activities. I thought about Blair Witch because I like the ending too. I think it really is. You can't even say it's the break from the terrifying nature, because it's build to that then horrifying conclusion, and then it immediately ends. That's the thing; it immediately ends. So you've got no time to almost take it in. You're just going to be left with that as the credits start to roll. That's
like it also, but it also gives you that almost sense of relief that it's over, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and those kind of endings where you're like kind of glad it's over because you're free from like the terror on display, kind of thing.
Agreed.
That's my last one, anyway.
Yeah, agreed. And these stupid sequels end up harming it long term. That should have always been a one and done movie, and that was it. So, I agree.
Cool.
My last one.
Well, I've heard of this one.
You'll have heard of it, maybe you'll have heard of the series, but not necessarily the film. This is the fifth and final Phantasm movie called Phantasm Ravager. So I didn't watch Phantasm films until about 4 or 5 years ago, and basically then did them all in a row. And I couldn't believe how good they were. I couldn't believe how mad and weird and strange they all were, and I fell in love with them. I thoroughly enjoyed them. Even to the point when we came to this massive gap between Phantasm 4 and Phantasm 5, because of course, Phantasm 5 Ravager is almost like not a fan one because it involves all the people involved in it, but it was basically, let's do this and say goodbye to the franchise. Because weirdly enough as well, shortly afterwards, the guy who plays the tall man, I can't remember his name, would end up dying as well in real life. So that effectively wrapped it up. But Phantasm Ravager did something I didn't expect. Now, I've grown to love the characters. Obviously, particularly the character of Reggie Bannister. I'd grown to love over the movies. I love that he started off as a side character and became the main one by the time he got to this stage. So when I got to Ravager, I did not expect to almost be in tears come the endings. I use endings in plural because Phantasm Ravager, if you don't know, it's a little bit messy, but it's set across several different time periods in several different universes, showing how things could have panned out or have panned out because of the ongoing battles with the Tall Man and his minions. In one of those specific series places, the people involved, Reggie and all the others, effectively lived normal lives, and Reggie ended up be in a home as an old man, still believing that the things like the Tall Man had happened and all that. And basically, in that ending, when we get to the final sequence of events, all these endings play out at the same time. And in this one, he dies peacefully in bed, surrounded by his friends. That fucking killed me. I could not believe how upset I was about that. It's so beautifully done because of all the people who have... Remember, some of these people, played by the same actors, started this franchise off as children in the original, and were now in their 40s and in the exact same role. That was it. It was that. I realize it's an ending because it's more like an ending to the franchise rather than an ending to this film specifically. But then obviously that tying into the other universe where the battle is still raging on, and that version of Reggie just suits up and gets ready to fight. That contrast of that was, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't have come up with a better way to end Phantasm.
Well, I haven't seen it, but you made me want to watch it now. So
Have you seen
yeah, I mean, I've seen the first one like a while ago, but
It gets
yeah, I
weird.
haven't seen anything beyond that. Yeah, I know, it's good. I've seen some clips, but yeah, it's always one I meant to watch. But I can imagine when you following like characters, like not only through the characters themselves, but the actors as they transition and get older and develop and stuff like that, and to the end. It's obviously, I can imagine it must be quite difficult when you know this is the end, not only for the character but like the franchise as well. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it should be noted as well. Part of that why maybe it hit me more than most people when I looked online was because I watched them one after the other in a binge. So like for me, their characters were still really fresh and real and stuff like that. There you go. There's our 5 favorite horror movies ending each. You got any thoughts? Do you agree with our choices? Do you disagree? Have you got your own special ones? You got to let us know in the comments, but also keep an eye out for the reverse, as we'll have another video with our least favorite horror movie endings. Check that one out too. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?